Hello everyone, and thank you for choosing Two Pagans in a Pod podcast. If you live in the Great Lakes area, please join the Discord. If you are in Michigan, specifically the Southwest Michigan area, join the Facebook group at Heathens, Wiccans, and Pagans of Southwest Michigan. If you live in Wisconsin, join Beard's Facebook group, Wisconsin Pagan Resources. And if you'd like to check out either of us on various social media platforms, all of the links for everything is down below in the description. Thank you for choosing Two Pagans in a Pod podcast. Hope you enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to Two Pagans in a Pod podcast. I am, of course, the bearded with mostest hostess. I totally screwed that up. Beard, and with me as always, my pagan brother from another mother, the other bearded monstrosity, the man himself.
You motherfucker, I'm holding this book trying to hold this pose. You were done.
It's not easy. It's not easy.
Well, it's because you kept going. And I was just like, okay. And I was going to turn. Oh, well, hello there.
Now you know how I feel.
Well, there's... All right. Yes, I'm here.
So, it is the day of recording a podcast.
That's the day after recording a podcast, but...
Well, technically it's the day after we're recording a podcast. That is true. But we are, before we get started with anything, as always, Fro, what are we doing?
We're going to start off with a stanza.
Damn straight we are.
So, I have the Study Have 'Em All by Carrie Overton, known and focused. Hoonin and Mugen Publishing, known focused. See our video on that. It was a gift. Beard?
As always, the translated poetic Edda by Lee M. Hollander.
Would you like to start?
Oh, I certainly.
Why, sweet.
Pretty sure we're on that. Sweet. Hi, Ghost. So, starting with the 11th stanza to start us off today.
Starting with the 11th stanza.
Oh, it's going to be one of those days.
Yeah, it is.
It's going to be one of those days.
To be fair, that was double fold. A, it was to troll you. B, it's to get my audio level, because I realized that I didn't check to see if our audio levels lined up very well. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to mock this man real quickly.
That's fair.
Dual purpose.
That's
honestly, fair. It's killing two stones with one bird. Like, honestly.
I think you have that backwards. Isn't it two birds with a stone? Oh, okay. Anyway.
Look, I'm no rocket surgery over here, okay?
Okay. So, the 11th stanza, the stanza of 11. Better burden bearest thou no wise than shrewd head on thy shoulders. But with worser food farest thou never than an overmuch of mead. Hit me with your best shot, Fro.
We have Bray. A better burden can no man bear on the way than his mother's wit, and no worse provision can he carry with him than too deep a draught of ale. Thorpe. A worse provision on the way he cannot carry than too much beer bibbing. So good is not, as it is said, beer for the sons of men. Thorpe. Is anyone supposed to know what the fuck you mean by that, Thorpe? Like, okay. Next we have Bellows. A better burden may no man bear for wanderings wide than wisdom. Worse food for the journey he brings, not afield than a over drinking of ale. It may be not a feld than a over drinking of ale. So I got to bring this up real quickly. Okay, I guess first off we can recap. The whole thing is wisdom.
Don't drink too much.
Wisdom is your best friend, and that's the best thing you can have on your travels. Knowledge, wisdom. And being drunk is going to take away from that. So that's probably the worst thing to have while you're traveling is to be drunk. Yeah, pretty simple on that one. Real quickly, I do want to touch on something. I do know there are some people who think that like the older the source you can get, the better. And while I think that is true as far as like not having as many like modern fingers in the pie, if you will. Dude, a lot of the fucking translations are just not easy to read though. And they're just, I don't know, there's a lot where it's like you put a lot of work into figuring out what the fuck was actually said. And it does take away for some. I am one of those people where it does take away. That's why I've brought it up before. I like the Crawford translations purely because they're much easier to read. Just because, like, I don't know, we go through this one, right? And they're like, this time, Bray. I knew exactly what Bray meant, right? So I was able to pick that apart real easy. But then, like, if I was going off just Thorpe's, I'd be like, Thorpe, what the fuck are you saying? Like, a worse provision on the way he cannot carry than too much beer bibbing. That has nothing to do with what the rest of them said. The rest of them were, like, the rest of them said, well, I guess it literally skipped the first part, right? Because all the other translations were like, the best thing you can have is wisdom. This one's just like, don't be drunk. And by the way, don't be drunk. So,
right.
Again, that's why I like Crawford, personally. I do, before we get into it, have just I don't even want to say a smidge of housekeeping. It's just more of I'm gonna vent, not necessarily vent, right? So this whole podcast, as we talked about, literally started because Beard and I we attempted to have like a little pagan study group, and we'd had like one person who would join us here or there, but it was mainly just Beard and I for the most part. And then we're like, hey, we should just record these conversations. We've kind of strayed away from the conversation part a bit and kind of went more on quote unquote informative, but we still kind of talk about the stuff, right? We go back and forth, which I do very much so appreciate that. And I am happy and I'm glad. And I had to remind myself of those roots. Because I did the thing that always crushes a content creator's soul. I went and looked at the analytics. And it was one of them things. It's like, oh man, our actual viewer retention.
Not great.
Nah, not on YouTube. Not on YouTube. We'll just put it this way. We're 8 minutes in. There's a good chance no one's heard this part of the conversation.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, it is skewed because it's a percentile. I say that, right? For everyone who listens 100% of the way, someone who listens for 2 seconds just brought it down to 50, right? So, I mean, they're... Right. All right. Right? No. Yes. Yeah, that's how that works.
Anyways. Something like that. I mean...
Yeah.
I deal with that stuff all day. I have to look at production percentages all day for my job as a work director, so...
Right.
Yeah. It takes... all it takes is one really low percentage to bring something that's, like, through the roof down to, like, nothing.
Right. But that being said, you know, that's just YouTube. There are the other platforms, and we get a decent amount of listens on that. But I had to remind myself that this was not about the views or anything. We only ever started it because Beard and I had conversations and went, we should record this. So it's one of them things where it's like, you know, so any other small content creator out there of any shape, form, whether it's video games, religion, blogs, cooking, whatever you're doing, don't get disheartened. Don't get disheartened. Remember why you're doing it. Remember the core reason. We're doing this because we have fun. We're doing it because we had conversations that we thought would be worth sharing. And just, again, we've said it before, to be examples. So, with all that being said, though, I know, Debbie Downer, my bad.
No,
With all that
I
being,
I was gonna say I have something to add there, Fro, because I think it's kind of funny that you
I'll
brought
add away.
that up because um I'm sure we'll bring it up either later or maybe we'll do a new link thing or whatever. But we do have a Patreon now. As my camera goes out of focus. So for audio listeners, we do have a Patreon. I'm sure the link will be somewhere whenever we do it. But one of the things I was thinking of doing, just because I don't know, something over the, especially the last couple days, has told me that I just need to start writing stuff down. I don't know if it was because I've seen a couple other content creators recently. You okay, Fro?
Oh, I was just curious where you got this fucking hair up your ass to write stuff down. That's a hell of an idea. I wish there was
I
somebody who would like hound you each week about writing stuff down for the notes.
yeah, okay, that's fair. That's a fair point.
Audio listeners, you
Um,
can't see the amount of eyes I'm giving him right now, and the sarcastic like John Travolta in that one movie. What is it, Pulp Fiction? Like look
Pulp
around,
Fiction,
like
the what?
yeah.
um, yeah, I don't know, just something. I don't know. I've kind of had this like thing, like just kind of like hit me in the back of the head, like write it down, idiot, write it down, write it down, go write it down.
So what have you wrote down?
I've written absolutely nothing so far.
You wanker.
I know that's gonna be the step is it's gonna keep nagging at me until I finally start to write things down. And so one of the things I was thinking of doing for the Patreon, because I think it's yeah, I should be set to both of our Patreon. No, I need the light on. Um yeah, because we have two Patreon tiers on the thing. But both of them should have access to whatever bonus content we put on there, and I was thinking of throwing it on there. But at the same time too, I was thinking of just I don't know, having a blog or something just to throw it on too, because I don't know. I feel like what I want to write down, I don't want to put behind any kind of paywall as well. So I don't know. I haven't quite decided, and I think that's been my biggest
The
hurdle with it right
bearded
now. It's
blog.
yeah, the bearded blog or a pagan blog or something. I don't know. But I don't know something. And I mean, and yeah, I mean, and because the whole point, one of the things that I know I've ranted about before is, and one of the things that like when a content creator does bring it up, um, yeah, and not to rag on any other content creator, because I mean, we all got to make money somehow. But when it comes to paganism and things like that, it I don't know, putting that kind of stuff behind a paywall or putting that stuff and not making it accessible to others, I don't agree with. Again, I understand why people do it. Not betting on any kind of people like that in any way, shape, or form.
Depends what we're talking about. I can
I mean, there
understand why maybe some archaeological pieces might be.
that I can understand, but
But even
like
then,
just a
I'm real,
general,
real torn on that. I understand, like, if I remember correctly, the concept is just to help recoup money, and to restrict access for people to spread false information. Right?
yeah, something like that.
If I remember correctly, I don't know how I completely feel about that though, because some of that stuff is like, well, I know you went out and discovered it.
Right. Well, I mean, the thing to remember with a lot of that stuff too is that at some point, some, not all, but most of that stuff does become public exhibits and museums and things like that. Not all the time, but a good portion of that stuff eventually will become accessible.
If
Um,
anyone's interested in a real cool video, I know on Today I Found Out, they had a like 20-minute, 15-minute video on treasure troves and what happens if you find essentially treasure, like actual buried treasure, archaeological treasure.
hmm, I'll have to go check that out.
TLDR, it ain't yours. Belongs to
That's fair.
humanity. That's the TLDR. Like 99% of the time, thanks for the find. The government is going to be taking that so it can be studied, because that is a piece of human history. Which I agree with mostly. Mostly.
Right.
There are certain things where it's like, come on. I just found 4 fucking gold doubloons. What are we going to learn? How many? We have gold doubloons. There's nothing special about these. Like, come on. Give me my gold. Because they don't necessarily compensate either, so.
Right.
That's where it gets a little shifty. Why is the British Museum full of a bunch of dead Egyptians? That's kind of weird. Anyways, let's continue.
Yeah. So, getting on today's episode, which I think is kind of fitting that we both had. Not only did you have that rant, and then I have had this nagging feeling, because our episode today is influential media to
just
pagans,
media.
for pagans, just influential media. So,
I mean, influential media on us, right?
Right. Well, to be technical on my side, it's more of like what my paganism influenced me to look at for media, which I think is kind of weird because it's the opposite for you.
I mean, yes, but no. I mean, it's still influential media on you.
That's fair.
If you're not consuming any other media, what other media is influencing you? What other media is having an effect on you?
That's fair, but I don't know. I take the meaning of influential media would be the media that influenced me to be pagan, but I'm not influenced by this to be pagan. I am pagan, and then being pagan influenced me to check out some of these things, and then I like them, so.
Yeah, but when your story is like, I've been pagan since I was 14, it's like, well, then you literally are eliminating any media that wasn't, like, strictly child. You know what I mean? So but it is a fair fair way of putting it, though, because that is a bit how we're going at it. Beard,
right?
Because he started being a pagan much younger. Let his religion influence. I guess that'd be the better way of putting it, right? You let your religion influence what you checked out. Whereas,
more or less, yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, none of this shit really affected my religion at all. It's just, I brought it up before, looking back, it's like, oh my god, there's a shit ton of Viking themed stuff I liked, or Nordic themed stuff I liked. But it didn't necessarily, I don't want to say any of it necessarily influenced me, right? Because we'll go right into it. We'll start with movies, right? And one of the movies I had was How to Train Your Dragon. I didn't watch How to Train Your Dragon then go, oh my god, I need to go do an offering to Odin. Right? It didn't work like that. And I doubt anyone else did.
I mean, if they did, I mean...
Let us know in the comment. If we have a How to Train Your Dragon pagan, I would love to hear that story. Oh my god.
Definitely seems like it would be an interesting story.
I feel like I should show my kid How to Train Your Dragon and then point out all the times that they mention Odin and Thor.
That's probably a good idea.
I know they mention Odin. They do the Odin's beard in the first one, but anyways.
Mm-hmm. Well, the TV show, they have a Loki's Day in the TV show.
They have a fucking TV show?
Yeah, there's 2 or 3 maybe.
3 shows?
Something like that. Yeah,
I know there's 3 movies. Holy shit. Okay.
Yeah, there's one where it's more like toddler level, where it's just kind of the dragons and like nondescript Viking kids. And then there's one where it is Hiccup and friends being the dragon riders.
Do you like dragons?
Me? Of course I like dragons.
Dragging these balls across your face. I just had to do it. We're going to be saying dragons so much this episode. I just had to do it at least once. I'm sorry. I'm 13, people.
You should have directed it at the viewers, not me.
I don't want to be mean to our viewers.
Fair.
I mean, come on. Besides,
Fair.
they might say yes. So, not really. Don't fucking call me. That was a joke. Oh yeah. So, there are things where it's like looking back at all the stuff I've liked, I have subtly been pulled towards pagan stuff, right? And part of it is because I've been a huge fan of mythology just in general, right? Greek mythology, Egyptian mythology, Norse mythology, not Chinese mythology. I'm going to say it right now, not Chinese. Respectfully, because this is just the simple, plain and truth. I love the mythology. Like, if I have a visual to watch, I love Chinese mythology. I struggle keeping up with the names. I really do. I'm not very good with names in general, right? Even when they're in my native tongue. I don't do well remembering people's name, right? So when you have other names out there, like I'll name the ones from Smite because I can remember them, right? Like Xing Shen, right? I know Xing Shen at this point because I've seen Xing Shen. I can visualize him. Like I hear the name Xing Shen, I can like boom, got it. Although if I would have to, if you were to read it, it doesn't look like how I'm pronouncing it at all. What I mean, so it's like that kind of slips me up a little bit too, and they're just like it's just hard for me to keep track with the stories. But anyways, so mythology, I've always been a huge fan. And African mythology too, by the way. A lot of the like Yoruban ones are pretty dope, and they're like the Orisha. Got tangented off there. I apologize.
No, I mean
But yeah,
you're.
so
I mean,
that's
and that's fair.
so a lot of media I've always consumed has had some mythological or pagan inspired elements. Or it's just straight up Viking, right? That's one of those three. So, for instance, How to Train Your Dragon, they are just straight up Vikings, right? They're not necessarily depicted as pagans. They're not depicted in a mythological term. They're just fantasy Vikings, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, that would be a good example for me. Now, Beard, how about we do a bit of a back and forth here?
Back and forth. So, I mean, for again background context, yes, I've been a little bit longer on the path than Fro. But yeah, prior to becoming pagan, just like you were saying, Fro, for me it was very much I liked mythology. Like when I was like in, like elementary school, middle school, I was like really big into Egypt. Like I at one point knew most of the gods and can like name everything about them. I was one of those kids.
It is not nut. Stop saying nut. It is not nut. It's newt. All right, continue.
Okay.
Just anyone who knows just the subtlest amount of Egyptian, they're like, "Do you know there's a god named Nut?" I'm like, "Yeah, I get it. I'm 13. I get it. I chuckle as well, but it's Newt. It's just how it is."
Fair. Very fair. I'm pausing so that way the audience can laugh.
They're not laughing.
I know.
I'm not funny.
So, when it came to movies, I mean, yeah, there were movies like you said, How to Train Your Dragon, which I don't remember exactly when the first one came out. I don't remember if it was before I was pagan or after I was pagan. I can't really remember because I haven't bothered to go back and look at the release date for it. Um, but like for me, like the most recent movie, The Northman, like I was interested in seeing that movie because here is a Viking themed movie that came out. You know, what was that last year when Northman came out? I think so.
Early last year, yeah. I'm just
Yeah.
unsure. If it wasn't last year, it was the end of 2021.
So, yeah. Then of course there's like the Vikings TV shows. The two of those, Vikings and then Vikings Valhalla. Um, like I've watched I've watched part of the first season of the one and most of the other one. I have to go back and finish them. But again, something interesting because it is depicting Vikings in the era in which, the religion or the spirituality that I have kind of is originating from. Um, but then there was one, and I looked back and I found the name of it, and the movie's called Ragnarok. That one's about some like archaeologist or history buff or something that goes out, to follow this trail, this thing, and then they discover Jormungandr, and it's protecting its eggs. And it was, I don't know, I don't want to spoil it. It's a really good movie. Um, and then I've watched my fair share of Viking themed B movies.
Jormungandr protecting its eggs. Female Jormungandr.
Yeah, they don't really describe it as
mean,
male or female in the thing.
It's a fucking snake, giant ass snake, right? I mean,
right.
Depicted as, right? It's a god. Don't get me wrong. It's a Jotun or a god. I'm unsure where I place Jorm. I'm kind of torn. I'm definitely going with more of a Jotun though.
Something that's still, I mean, regardless of really what it is, it does deserve some form of like nod from time to time, in my opinion.
A fair acknowledgement.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it is like the offspring of Loki, the gender bender queen king.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's nothing that says that, some kind of giant serpent couldn't reproduce asexually either. I mean,
No? Also, God, right? Gender to a
right.
god. What is that?
Right. So,
that's come. I had my Christian buddy way back one time to kind of give me shit about Loki birthing Sleipnir. And it's like, okay. Didn't God birth man? He's like, well, no, he created him. I'm like, what's another word for creating? Birth? Oh, okay. So, just because in our story we made it where it was like literally birthed, do you think that people really thought? I mean, sure, there may have been some people who thought literally, in the non-physical forms, somehow there was that. But again, not mythic literalist. A lot of that shit is just
right.
Not a parody. Parable? Is it a parable? A story that's supposed to represent something or something represented through story form? Yeah. So essentially, Loki could create Sleipnir with the help of Swadalfari, or using Swadalfari to do it. You know what I mean? Who knows?
Mm-hmm. But yeah. So I mean, there's a good amount of on Netflix or Amazon if you're really really bored. There's a good amount of like Viking themed type B movies, or I know YouTube has a couple ones that you can watch with ads on YouTube.
I gotta say, I was like, "Hey Beard, how about a good example?" And you're like, "Let me list off my entire category."
I'm sorry.
No,
I warned you. I warned you.
I
am
know.
exhausted today.
Beard.
Today is a day that I'm easily able to ramble.
I know, Beard. But what did our good boy Leknir put right in between our two notes that I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. We should do that. Bounce back and forth from each other. Going example to example. I mean, it doesn't have to be literally example to example. I jumped around too, right? I'm just giving you shit. I'm in a feisty mood. Beard's in a ranty. I'm in a feisty mood, in case y'all can't tell.
This
is what happens when we record on Tuesdays. This is the second Tuesday recording. I don't work Wednesdays. This is essentially my Friday. Like, I am off work. Like, I'm good to go. I just got some pizza in me. I done had a couple rips off my vape here. Feeling pretty fucking toasty. Like, I'm good to go, people.
Mm-hmm. And I worked a 10-hour shift yesterday and walked 4 miles home.
I mean, I also worked a 10-hour shift, but I did not walk the 4 miles home. But I definitely walked more than that during my shift. But I'm not taking away from you, because I've also worked a job where I didn't walk a bunch and then had to walk roughly about 4 miles home also. So I've done what you've done, and it is shit. Walking home after work is just ass. It's just never fun, especially if it's been an 8+ hour shift. It is ass. You're tired. Your legs are tired. Even if you got a desk job, your legs are tired because they haven't been stretched, right? If you have a walking job, your legs are tired. You've been fucking walking, and guess what? You're walking more. Yeah, it's a real sumbitch. Back on track though.
I don't mind the exercise, and it was kind of a nice walk home, but the aftermath is what sucks. So, getting back on track, how about we talk a little bit of the gaming?
Oh no, Beard, we are not done with the movie section. We're not done with the movie section. We're not done till we hit the big boy. We are not done.
What are we hitting as the big boy then?
I mean, the Lord's the big boy, but we're not there yet. So I have a few sleeper picks that these ones will be the ones that maybe they don't fall in the 3 categories I gave earlier. Maybe they just fall a little bit under paganism, because they kind of got me in the pagan hippie mindset, if you will. One in particular, I'm using it as an example, but Miyazaki movies in general. I know that's going to be weird for a Norse pagan to be saying, but all Miyazaki movies are all about living with nature, not destroying nature. It's all super animistic. The story, I mean, he was a World War II survivor. He saw the bombs go, I mean, he wasn't in the war, but he saw the bombs go off, or one of the bombs go off, or the aftermath of one of the bombs. I don't remember the exact details right now. So a lot of it is anti-war, anti-nuclear weapons type thing, but he uses them a lot of times with essentially, you'll have science and tech versus the old spirits, the old world, nature, old gods. It's actually very I mean, it's Shinto. It's Shinto inspired, but it's got some heavy fucking pagan vibes when you're looking at it through a Western lens, right?
That's fair. I never really personally looked at it that way, but yeah, like when you say it and you describe it that way, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna push Princess Mononoke to the forefront as like one of the best examples, right?
Oh yeah, I mean that one's blatant. Like if you don't get that, tech new world versus old world vibe out of that one, you're clearly not paying attention to what the theme of the movie is.
Yeah, and in the way like the spirits are depicted, right? I think the spirits in that are very well depicted as Jotuns for the most part. Right?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Or maybe not Jotuns. We've talked about how you and I kind of view Vanir, maybe Vanir, where it's like not necessarily a destructive force, but this will be done.
Yeah.
If you're in the way or not kind of thing. So maybe that. But here's another sleeper pick coming from Japan. Digimon. The first Digimon. The very first Digimon cartoon show is all about being a good person, right? Bettering yourself. They have kinship being built amongst the Digidestins, right? They all have to learn to value, their good traits, and they have to embrace some of their downfalls to be able to work with it, right? Which wholehearted. I mean, granted, a lot of those are just like good human message in general, but in a lot of paganism, a lot like embracing, like acknowledging like you have flaws and stuff like that, without the God made you have problems, blah blah blah. And on top of that, it's another one where they are trying to just restore the world and nature to just like its norm.
Okay.
Those are, again, they're some paganistic vibes, but a bit of oddball picks, right?
Fair. I mean, the Princess Mononoke and the Miyazaki stuff. Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that. The Digimon, when you describe it that way, I can be on board with that. But honestly, like, I mean, I grew up on Digimon and Pokemon. Like, I remember when they first came
I didn't
out.
say Pokemon. I did not say Pokemon.
Well, I'm just,
Digimon,
because
season
Digimon and
1 and
Pokemon
2.
came out around the same time. But yeah,
Digimon,
I mean,
season 1 and 2.
Now that you've said it, I can totally, thinking back on those OG Digimon episodes. Yeah, I definitely. I'd have to go back and watch them now, but yeah, I could definitely. Yeah,
Well,
I could
just
see
a
it.
lot of it is just the balance of the world, right?
Right.
Which I'll attribute to me not necessarily falling for the God is the one and only good. If it didn't come from him, it's bad. And just like humans can't be good, humans are evil. There is no good in you. Like it definitely contributed to me not agreeing with both of those mindsets. So, do you have another example? Because I have one slight other one that I feel like was kind of popular, but not like super popular.
And then the big boy.
And then the big boy.
Okay. Well, I'll pull out of my secondary movie game category, and it's more of it's not so much that the movie I can't speak to the game, so forgive me anyone who knows the game. I'm purely speaking of the movie Max Payne that stars
I don't know who it stars, but yes, Max Payne. So
Marky
they
Mark.
were
Mark
a. Oh, you're talking about the movie. That's right. We're in movies.
The movie.
Okay.
Yeah, Max Payne the movie. In the movie, the drug that everybody's taking makes them see Valkyries, or supposedly is making them see Valkyries.
That's because that's what the drug is called. I know you put this on your list. I don't know how much Max Payne you played.
No, I'm not familiar with the games at all.
I
knew that there was games. I knew there was two of them, but I didn't
fucking familiar with the Max Payne. Not only that, I'm going to link you a video by this guy. I don't remember if it was Josh Strife Plays or if it was your favorite son. It may have been your favorite son. Go check those guys out. They're both really good YouTubers. Yeah, dude, paganist or Nordic themes are fucking rife in that game, dude. Like rife. There's people's named Odin. There's people named Freya. You'll have like
it was one of I mean that's what I was gonna get into with the movie is that as soon as it dawned on me because it's free on as of this recording it was free on YouTube. I don't know if it still is free to watch with ads on YouTube by the time people are listening to this. If it is, cool, go watch it.
You're pagan, you'll enjoy it enough.
Yeah. I mean, there is some things in there where if you're a Norse pagan, you're gonna go, "That's wrong. Why are they depicting it that way?" But get over it. It's a movie. It's entertainment. But like they have the reference, the name of the pharmaceutical company that makes the drug is Azier Pharmaceuticals. In the movie, Max Payne's former partner his name is Balder, and in the not to spoil a little of the movie, but Balder ends up dying.
Yeah, and that's the best part. The names they will be a bit of a hint too. It's great,
right? So, and a lot of the naming convention, it's either the last name or maybe it's like you look at the name and you're like, oh, it's that, but then it's the way the name is pronounced in the movie. Like you're like, wait, that's not what his name. Like, is that what? Like, and so there's a lot of like subtle hints and references.
The developers are Norwegian for that game,
which makes a lot of sense.
Why there's so many hints and references to that. Yeah,
but yeah, it was one of those ones where it's like it may not be necessarily like full straight on pagan, but there is so much reference and hint and
they don't once try to replicate, emulate, or pretend like they're retelling a story at all. They just literally are using terms. Not even terms. They're just using names, right?
Right.
Just purely names. Although some names will kind of hint. Like Boulder, I think, is the best example. I know there's
Yeah, 'cause
another one. I'm trying to think what it is. There's another one that gives it away in his name that the dude's gonna betray him.
the
Or something
the
along
guy
the
who
lines.
was the security, well, in the movie, he's the security officer chief at the pharmaceutical company. Or are you
Maybe.
talking about a different character?
Maybe. I can't. It's on the tip of my tongue. It's been a second. But yeah. Max Payne. Fucking, that's another good one. And that's
Definitely a
one
good
of the ones, like, it's so subtle. You don't even realize it. Because, like you said, the dude's name's Balder. You just fucking bat your eye. Like, you don't even bat your eye. You're like, oh.
It's not on his desk. It's not even spelled like the same way, but the way
yeah,
it's
like
pronounced.
ER. It's BALDER. Boulder. Like, they have it like, Beard Night. We're going Boulder.
Right.
It's great.
So that was my last major one. I mean, I could name off a couple of the B movies, but you search Viking on Netflix or Amazon Prime or anything like that, and you'll get a good amount of these various B movies.
I
And
think
they're all good and hokey.
The only B movie I think Beard and I agreed upon, and I'm only going to say we agreed upon it because I put it, and he's like, hey, this movie is Pathfinder. It's a pretty good one.
I would.
It's
Is that the one that stars? What's it?
I don't remember who it stars. It's literally just like the Viking shows up, meets a bunch of the indigenous people, and then the rest of his people show.
No, he's the child who gets left behind.
Yeah, child who gets left behind. That's what it is. Yep.
And he's raised by the indigenous, and then when they come back, he's the only one who can save them.
Right. Yep. Which, it's a good story and all. I did watch it when I was younger, and now that I'm older, I realize that it's kind of a trope. The old mighty whitey, right?
Yeah.
You gotta have the white dude save the non-white folks.
Yeah. It's a very tropey movie.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that one for its entertainment value.
Besides that, I honestly think it'd be sweet to see that in reverse sometimes, right? Like, where's the one, like, the indigenous went with the fucking Vikings and when they came back? Like, I know that that would be a cool story, right?
Right.
I don't know why any of that stuff doesn't ever go the other way. But, so, on to the big one now. The Lord of them all. The Lord of the Rings.
Well, you are forgetting one other one that I think would be
shit.
up there.
I'm sorry. It's because I got distracted. One more I'm going to touch on, but not go into detail, because there's no need to go into detail, because it's just a retelling of a saga, and that's Beowulf. I loved the movie Beowulf, but it's literally just a retelling of a saga, though. It is a mythological story. There's no real detail needed. It was a really good, like, movie. I saw it in movie form first, right? Obviously, because it came out when I was like 15 or 16. Dude, that was my very first IMAX, like, full screen.
Oh, so you saw the computer generated.
Yeah.
You're talking about that one, yeah? Because there's Beowulf movies going back to.
But yeah, I was talking about
the oldest one I've seen is from like the 60s.
Yeah, I was talking about the blockbuster recent one though.
That's fair.
I wasn't going to name the one older than us, bud. Okay, I say that know. There's one that probably got released in '92 that's not older than me, but whatever. No, I'm talking about it was like 2003 Angelina Jolie CGI one. Saw it in IMAX, saw it 3D, saw it fucking big old screen. It was dope. But yeah, it's literally just an old English pagan saga. Like this, it's just. It's got trolls. It's got dragons. It's got fucking meat halls. Sea monsters. Like, it's just Viking longboats. I don't know. There's no explanation needed on that one. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
Onto the Lord.
But, yeah, getting on to the one who will rule them all.
So, I will first and foremost start off with J.R.R. Tolkien is a Catholic. A devout Catholic. He didn't write Lord of the Rings to be pagan. No, there's no subtle pagan messages or anything like that at all. He was Catholic. From his own words, it was written as a story and written as a secular story and revised into a Catholic one. So he himself considered it a story with Catholic overtones. And it is. It just wholeheartedly is. That's from the words of Arthur, from the author. That's what he meant. That's what he intended. But it also has a shit ton of pagan inspiration and inspiration from folklore, which can be kind of hand and foot sometimes, right? I mean, what's the old or the old pagan belief if not folklore, right? But there is a distinction between folklore and mythology and actual like religious beliefs. There is a difference,
right?
But they do go hand in foot a lot of times. And he did take heavy inspiration.
Do we want to go into what some of those inspirations are?
I think the one notable one, which is very obvious in The Hobbit and in the core theme of Lord of the Rings in general, would be, I don't remember the name of the person, but it would be the story of the cursed ring, right? So, I do know it was Fafnir's father. Fafnir, I do remember that. Fafnir's father, the dwarf. His son was killed by Odin. What was it? Odin, Thor, and Loki, or someone else.
It changes in the Germanic version. It's a different, like, it's, I think in the Germanic version it's Loki, Thor, and somebody else, and then in the Scandinavian ones I think it's Odin, Loki, and Thor. I could be wrong. So, I could have it backwards, or I could have it slightly
Loki's the common one.
Yeah, like I think Loki I think is the one who ends up doing or he's the one who strikes the deal. I don't know if he's the one who necessarily does the killing.
Yeah. So an otter gets killed. Otter ended up being this dwarf's son shapeshifted. They strike a deal where they're going to exchange, essentially do weregold, which is just like gold payment for a death, essentially. The convoluted story, it's supposed to be enough gold to make it so there's no fur visible on the otter skin, etc., etc., etc. Loki ends up getting his hands on this ring, which is cursed, to bring misfortune to its owner, essentially.
Yeah, but it'll bring you great wealth at the cost of misfortune, I think is right. What it is.
So Loki ends up using this ring to sweeten the pot somehow, or for some reason. It's something about like a whisker showing, but I'm only half telling the story, so it's kind of pointless.
And again, there's different variations depending on which source you're kind of looking at too.
He accepts the deal. So Fafnir's dad now has the ring. Fafnir kills his dad and takes the ring, and
as well as all of the treasure.
Along with all the treasure. And then eventually, over time, Fafnir slowly transforms and physically changes shape, much like how the One Ring from Lord of the Rings makes people want to kill other people to get it, and will physically deform them after a while, right? So there's one correlation. But eventually turns Fafnir into a dragon. It doesn't do that in Lord of the Rings, it just defigures, right? But this dragon hoards his treasure, right? Like Smaug. And, oh God, what is it? Hoards his treasure. There's one more link. I had it. It was right on the fucking tip of my tongue.
Well, the ring itself, what it does is that at the end of every day, it creates 9 copies of itself. And in the Lord of the Ring,
it's not Draupnir.
No, that's the ring that he gives them. because
Isn't
that's
that
how he
Draupnir's
increases his
Odin's
wealth.
ring?
Yeah, I think so, because that's the ring that they give him. Because it's this coveted ring, but basically Loki puts the curse on it or something. I mean, again, depending on the version of the story, but they basically tell him that if we give you this ring, it's gonna cause your downfall, but you're gonna be the richest on the planet. And that's why he takes the ring, and that's where the reference to the one ring to rule them all, because or the inspiration, or supposedly that's the inspiration that Tolkien took from that ring, is that because then Sauron gives 9 rings to men, he gives X number of rings to the dwarves, and 3 rings to the
3.
elf. Is it 5 and 3?
So I may or may not have watched the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy leading up to this episode.
Fair.
Us recording this. And on top of that, I may or may not have listened to like 30 hours of Lord of the Rings lore videos in the past week. Also getting ready for this episode.
Fair.
I have delved deep into the mines of Moria. So.
Fair. Very fair.
So, from that story, we get inspirations for Smaug and the ring itself, right? We get Schmiegel's physical transformation. Gandalf very much so looks just like a lot of the Hermetic, I believe is the term, tellings of Odin from different stories in some of the sagas. I think especially from not Tacitus. Or was it Tacitus?
I don't remember.
Whoever wrote a lot of the Hermetic, or not Hermetic, it's not Hermetic. Humor?
The one, a lot of it's the ones that the stories that there are the stories and sagas that reference him as being the wanderer who roams around Midgard prior to losing his eye.
Right. So yeah. Lord of the Rings definitely got a lot of inspiration from their from that. And then like you do have trolls in there, dwarves, elves, although the elves aren't necessarily like they are from Norse mythology. There's, you look at the names, they're taking a lot of names are inspired, like a lot of the dwarf names in general are just wholeheartedly dwarf names from Norse mythology. Like he did like straight up take a lot of those names and use those.
Right. Well, I mean, one of the big things, at least from my understanding of Tolkien, is that he was a linguist.
Yes, very much a linguist.
A lot of the naming convention and thing like that was him, because I know like one of his goals as part of writing the story was he was trying to create a language, and that just so happened to be Elvish, which is an actual language you can go and learn. There's actual dictionaries and stuff for it, which I think is kind of cool. But I like there was deliberate and specific like etymologies he was using for each like naming convention for different groups of people, and it was like probably one of the most detailed and thought out universes for like, well,
don't say one of. Don't say one of. The.
That's fair.
Unless, I mean, there's some obscure book out there that sold 100 copies that probably has way more in it, right? I'm sure. But if you're going with anything close to popular, I don't think anything holds a candle to the story building and lore that has gone into the. Maybe you could argue like 40K, right? Because they have books upon books upon books,
right? But I mean,
also from numerous authors, and they do conflict pretty heavily, whereas Tolkien only conflicts occasionally.
Right, and that was gonna be my caveat, because it was my understanding that he wrote Lord of the Rings as a single book in one go, and then later on it was split into 3. And then The Hobbit came either before or after, I forget which. And then
Hobbit was the first one.
The Hobbit was the first one?
It all started with, there was a hobbit in the hole in the ground, or there once lived a hobbit in a hole.
Um, so between those two books, and then he was working on the third thing, which was like the extended one-off stories or whatever that his son finished, I think.
Silmarillion.
Yeah. Or did he finish that whole one himself? I don't
Or
remember.
no, not the Silmarillion. That's the yeah.
Because there was a
Yep,
book
yep.
that I know one of his son
Yeah,
or his
no,
son or
there's the
one of his
Silmarillion,
sons
I think.
finished or something.
Yeah, Christopher Tolkien
Um,
finished it up.
yeah. And that's like additional stories that take place in different parts of the timeline and things like that that all kind of like connect some dots and things like that.
When you say
But
takes
like
place in the timeline, it's okay. When Lord of the Rings takes place in the Third Age, right? In its lore,
right.
the second and the first age are filled out. Like they are filled out with whole histories. Period.
Hmm.
Tolkien was once noted himself as saying that the Lord of the Rings story is nothing but a story that happened in his world, right? Like he just like took a picture of it because he's got so much stuff. Like you mentioned the naming conventions. Dude, I don't remember exactly the example, but there's this one city that like its name, like he went back like 1,000 years on this place. I'm like, oh well, they started off as this, but before that it was captured, and so it was called this in the Elvish name, but then got switched over to this in the fucking Black speech name. So, but they named it after what it was called in Elvish, so it's actually called. And it's like, bro, it's
Hmm.
a fucking mountain
Yeah.
or
No,
whatever it
I mean
was.
take
But
and take that. I mean that's the span of two books, part of a third book that then gets finished by his son, plus whatever notes and things he has written down. Oh, for one man, for essentially two books. Whereas something that is so far thought out, such as the Warcraft universe, or 40K, or normal Warhammer, or Star
I don't know if
Wars,
I'd say thought out as much as filled out.
but I mean that's fair. I mean those universes have been thought out, filled out, expanded upon, but with, like you said, so many conflicting natures. Like, you have like Star Wars, for example. You have all of the stuff that was written prior to Disney, which a lot of those
Gone,
authors tried to
gone.
try
Legends,
and keep, and now it's well Legends
legends. It's
content
gone.
because now Disney's like, nope, none of that happened. So now it's just Legends content that may or may not exist, and we may or may not use it. Some people now, with some of the stuff that's come out, have taken from Legends and made some of the Legends stories canon, or like referenced something and kind of hinted at maybe being canon. But like then you have that, and then you have 40K and Warhammer, where they've rebooted themselves so many times, or they've jumped around in their timeline, and like, oh, well now we're gonna fill in this part of the timeline, and it's not gonna connect to anything else that we've done. So good luck. Um, because we want it to go in this direction, not that direction. But I mean, you have all of those things, but that's done by multiple authors over, the age. The Star Wars came out in the 70s. It's 2023, so that's 50 plus years of content that's been created by multiple authors, multiple media sources. Whereas Lord of the Rings is one guy. Like, I mean, you can't.
And I love how he also would respond to people.
Right.
Like if they message, and not in a J.K. Rowling kind of way where they just literally make shit up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's fair.
we're not gonna go down that rabbit hole too, because she's a whole nother can of worms. So Beard,
I have mixed feelings on Rowling, but that's a different.
we're still in, or we just finished the movies in the TV. Well, I do feel like that is going to be a vast majority of it, because a lot of the rest of the stuff is some sort of variant, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I do think we do got to kind of speed it up just a smidge, so I will kind of
Okay.
blast us through this next part. We did have music written down here. I mean, let's be real. Besides Amon Armith, Sabaton, and Born of Osiris, and that's just because I'm a metalhead and I have a Swedish friend. Not Born of Osiris. That's like very Egyptian, but it reminds me of. I checked it out because I liked Egyptian mythology, so I got attracted to that. But that's kind of why I bring it up. But Sabaton and Amon Amarth, I mean, I liked Vikings and I liked metal, so they were kind of just thrown at me, right?
Right.
I,
Now,
you're in the same boat too, I'm sure. Like you just
especially with Amon. Now, I mean, one of the things I don't know for sure, but I know like the lead vocalist of Amon, he and his wife live in a very green centric nature lifestyle. Like they literally live in a solar powered home out in the middle of nowhere and somewhere in Scandinavia, and they're all about living in nature.
They're
And
the owners of
like, I don't.
Grimfrost.
Are they?
Amon Amarth owns Grimfrost.
I
I'll
didn't know
Google
that.
right now to confirm, but go ahead and keep telling your story.
But I don't know, like I've never seen anything that specifically stated that he's come out as like I'm actually pagan, like, but I wouldn't be surprised, and I wouldn't be surprised if anyone in the band was. Um, but I know like a lot of their songs and stuff are specifically like retellings of sagas or tellings of historical events that we know about. Now their most recent album that they had, the Great Heathen Army, they are touching on there's a couple songs on that album that are very like, okay, that's very pagan, or you're making reference to something that is specifically pagan. So I mean, I don't know. I've never looked it up to see if he's ever like confirmed that he is actually pagan, but I wouldn't be
Well,
surprised.
let me confirm this for you. Johan Hegg, vocalist of Mon Armath, has decades of experience when it comes to the music business. He is one of the founders of Grimfrost and the CEO of Grimfrost Records. Grimfrost isn't born out of a trend. We have been involved in the Viking Nordic scene since the early 1990s. And that is from their page.
It's still, because I mean, there
Oh my god.
there
All right.
is no there is that whole Viking thing is like a, you know, because there's people who do like the not the battles, like the reconstructed battle things, where they just do it to fight, or they'll do like there's the historical stuff where they'll rebuild a Viking village and they'll do like historical traveling exhibit things. But
Why
it's
am I?
50
I'm
50
drawing a
whether some
fucking
of those
blank on
people.
that too. Not recon, not reconstructionist, not
I mean, you know what I'm talking
reenactment.
about.
Reenactment.
Reenactments. Yeah. Um, Now, I mean, would it surprise me if some of those people are pagan? No, wouldn't. Not at all. But not all of those people are necessarily. I mean, does it strongly hint?
I
Yes.
mean,
Yes, it does.
I'm looking for like actual like, hey, look, I can send you a link to here. But Grimfrost were the people that copyright or had the word heathen copywritten. Remember, like there's a bit of the controversy about that. And if I remember correctly, the whole reasoning they did that was so other big companies couldn't come in and stop heathens from being using the term heathen. But I'm still looking. I'm still
surprise
looking.
me. I mean, and by all means, if anybody, you know, in the comments has confirmation and can provide us links or anything like that, by all means. I mean, I'm not doubting in any way. I love their music. I find him to be a wonderful human being in a lot of the stuff that he does support, and or anything that I've ever found an article about him doing. Like, I mean, I would bow down before this man as Wayne is Wayne's World. I'm not worthy. Because he's an all around good dude from what I've seen. So, I mean, would it surprise me that he was pagan? Absolutely not. But at the same time, it wouldn't surprise me if he wasn't. If he was just a naturally good dude. Same with anybody in that band.
I'm trying to find it. I'm still trying to find it, but I'm like 99% sure that dude is pagan.
Again, I wouldn't be surprised.
Aha, hold up.
I
The band takes the same name from the Sindari name of Mount Doom. Oh, really? Really? Amon Amarth is a Swedish melodic death metal band from Tumba, formed in 1992. It takes its name from the Sindarian, which is in Lord of the Rings, name of Mount Doom, a volcano in J.R. Tolkien Middle Earth. It all wraps back to
Full circle.
The
Full
One
circle.
Ring. The One Ring. Their lyrics mostly deal with the Viking mythology, history, blah, 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 blah. Viking Come on, I clicked on the link that said the answer. It just had it in the fucking... Oh, my God. You know how it's like it gives you a short description when you click on it?
Yeah, and then when you click on it, it's
like takes you top article.
It takes you to the big article, and
yeah,
it's like
yeah.
it's this one little snippet in a
I
gigantic
just
article.
had it where it's like right here. Amon Amarth paying tribute to pagan gods. No, it's about their son. God damn it! All right, fucking. I won't put links in the description or anything. Just comment, people. I'm sure someone's invested at this
if
point.
Anybody knows, if anybody knows one way or another, or can point us into an article, I would be more than interested, because again, it wouldn't surprise me. And if he isn't, I'm just okay. I was okay with it, because I mean, again, like everything that I've seen about him or anything about the band is, I mean, it's amazing. They do amazing things. They're really, big with their fan base, and they do a lot of cool stuff, and they support a lot of good stuff too. I've never seen them support anything negative or do anything negative. And they do have done. I would say they have had a fairly large impact on a pagan basis, or for a pagan community as a whole. So, again, wouldn't surprise me. But let's get back on track, Fro, and let's move on to.
Yes, back on track. So,
I mean, you have some books and some other stuff like mythology podcasts.
I have books and podcasts. I'm just going to leave this as very vague. I'm a huge mythology fan. I don't have any specifics. Aside from the podcast that's literally called Mythology, like Mythology Podcast. It's a pretty decent podcast.
I've listened to that one too. That one's a good one.
Yeah, I've just always, like, if I can get my hands on any mythology books, I've checked it out. Not necessarily the sagas. That's something a little more recent, where I'm looking for, like, very specific sagas. I've always been looking for, like, Neil Gaiman's mythology or something like that, right? More recently, though, definitely been more specific studies. But I think really the last thing before we ended up here, because we're getting a little overboard in the time, is there are 3 video games that need to be brought up that have definitely influenced me. The Elder Scrolls, Skyrim, specifically Skyrim. Dude, that's just Viking inspired AF, right? And it was the first time I've ever, and it's ironic because it's a literal fake ass like belief system, but it's the first like pagan belief system I looked at without just giving me like, oh, it's just mythology, right? And I actually like kind of got into the mindset of like, what do these people believe? Like, how does this mythology work? Like, and it was kind of ironic that that was like my mental first step at looking into like paganism, like actual polytheism. But it was just kind of as an observer. And again, it was about a fucking video game too. And I wasn't like, no delusion there. I know it's just a video game. But yeah, if you look at people like the Nords in that game, the Nords are Norse. I mean, let's be real. The Nords are supposed to be Norse people.
Not even specifically Skyrim. It goes all the way back to, the first couple Elder Scrolls game when they introduced
Daggerfall, Arena, Morrowind, but Skyrim is that's the one that takes place in
Skyrim.
In Skyrim. So which is the Northland. So it's the buildings look very Nordic inspired, just yeah. Except for there's a lot of wooden roofs.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't see that. Well, I mean, you'd probably see that more in Scandinavia. You wouldn't see it as much in Iceland. Then we have God of War.
Now, are you talking OG God of War or the newer God of War?
I mean, as far as getting me to, so there was a lot of Norse things. So I enjoyed old God of War. I played every single God of War that's been made except for the newest one right now. I've played and beaten every single one. Um, so I've enjoyed all of them. But the new one, when it came out, there was a lot of things coming together within like those couple year period that was like a media onslaught of just like Nordic shit. That's when I kind of got into Sabaton. Right, I got this going on. I was learning Swedish, which is another thing which influenced me, right? Because that got me looking at even more just Nordic culture in general, all the different or Scandinavian. Uh, just getting like berated. That's when I got into the Lord of the Rings lore, like just a whole bunch of things. But yeah, I was specifically talking the God of War, the Norse one. But the last game, Smite, Battleground of the Gods. Play a shit ton of Smite, dude. It's literally a game about different gods battling each other.
I mean, that's what attracted me to Smite. Was I mean, I saw was around the time when it had first come out. I saw the image of it, and the image was like it was Thor fighting somebody, and I was like, I'm gonna check that out.
I almost got a Loki tattoo before I was a pagan. Right.
Mm.
Yeah. And I have brought it up. I have a Discordia and Cuchulainn tattoo. Which is kind of weird because I do worship Discordia now. Not really weird. It's just kind of like it's kind of cool.
Full circle.
Yeah, full circle.
Don't just wait and see. Add colon to your list.
I'm not sure how I feel about Cuchulainn. Like I feel I know of Cuchulainn, I know his stories. I feel no connection, no reason to worship, no reason to offer to him, no connection. There's just nothing there, you know.
Fair enough.
I love playing his character in the game though.
Oh yeah, his character is pretty fun.
Yeah, and these ones and all this stuff is just like, again, I brought up none of this stuff has attracted me by itself. It's literally just like Death by a Thousand Cuts, where it's like, oh my god, I look around, it's like how much of my shit grown, how much stuff that I've enjoyed in my life has had just this subtle pagan, mythological, polytheist influence to it, you know what I mean? Or animistic, shamanistic, not necessarily shamanistic, but
right.
It's just like the Miyazaki movies, I guess, could be argued a bit more of that, but I don't like the term. Others might use it though, so I bring it up simply because of that. Yeah. So again, none of this stuff like by itself was like what got me there, but eventually when it's just looking around and it's like, you know who's not around right now? Mr. Jesus. I don't see him anywhere. But I'm fucking surrounded by a bunch of pagan shit. Right. And of course, then spiritual experience happens, etc., etc., etc.
Right. I think. So, for me, real quick, I want to backtrack.
Let's backtrack before we wrap it up.
Yeah, real quick on music, and then I'll touch a couple games, and I think there's one game that we both should make a mention of. It's not a video game per se. It does have video games, but there is one important one I think we should mention. So like for music, there is stuff like that I've noticed, you know, after being pagan, especially for being pagan for so long now. Like there's a industrial band called Combi Christ that I just noticed a couple weeks ago that on their album covers they have runic writing on a lot of their album covers, and I never noticed it before.
Dude, I found out one of my favorite bands is a Christian metal band. I just found that out, and I'm like, yo, I didn't. It never clicked. And
Yeah,
I listen to
it
a
blows your
shit.
mind.
I say one of my favorite bands. They pretty much so are like my favorite band. Although I haven't listened to them in a while, not their recent album. But yeah, and I'm like, oh my god, they're so Christian. How did I not know?
um,
And they're a screamo
but
band
yeah,
too, so that's part of the like why it just didn't click.
huh. Yeah, it's always interesting how stuff like that catches you.
Did you know the
But
Killers is
like,
a Christian band?
really,
Yeah, yeah.
huh? Huh?
Look, sing the chorus to Mr. Brightside in your head.
Huh?
Turning saints into the sea. Anyways.
Holy anyway,
I
so
know, right? I know, right?
what? What? Oh my God! Why did you do this to me? Um, so like musically, one of the things, especially in more recent years, that's caught my attention is uh artists that are trying to take more of that folk music kind of aspect, um, or like traditional style, or like using like ancient instruments or as close to ancient instruments as they can find or and recreate. Groups like Danheim or Druna, Heilung, all of those I think are really great.
I,
You have
I
a finger
don't.
up.
Danheim's focused.
Are they really?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Ugh, Muppets.
I know it sucks because I enjoyed their music as well. Although we have mentioned about making, there's ways of guaranteeing that Focus don't get paid.
Right.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang, I'm gonna have to go look into that now.
Because it's not like the lyrics, what he's saying, are focused, right? Just the person is. So I mean,
and yeah, that's one of those weird like
if you go about
porn.
doing things where they don't make a profit, it's not like you're actually peddling bad material.
Right. Now, if they come out and make a song that's bad
Oh
material, I think
yeah,
that becomes a completely different issue.
Yeah. Then it doesn't really matter whether or not they got paid for you listening to it or not. You're listening to some bad messages. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, we're on the same page here, Beard. We got you.
Right. So real quick for games, I mean, obviously, because I know we're running long here and I don't want to speed us up too much. The first time I had played Morrowind before, and I played Oblivion, and then they were kind of doing it to be funny, but also knew that I liked RPGs. But because they knew I was Norse pagan, I was gifted Skyrim with a gaming PC because they were just making a joke at me being Norse pagan, and they just assumed that I would like it because they didn't realize that I was already a fan of the Elder Scrolls games. But my friend was making a joke because they're like, "Oh, you're pagan and you like Viking stuff. You're just gonna enjoy this because it's Viking themed." So it kind of worked out in the end, but it was a fun little story. A little bit more to that story, but that's the short and sweet of it. But of course, there's games like Minecraft, Fortnite.
What the fuck? How is Minecraft pagan? I thought my Digimon was like fucking from left field. Don't even say it's because of the Nether, you motherfucker.
No. In Minecraft, they actually have and not the Java edition. Well, I'm sure you can probably find some mods for Java edition, but in the like regular edition now, they do have the like downloaded skin worlds or whatever, and they do have a Norse mythology. They have a Greek one. They have a Chinese one. And they have different things in them they'll teach you and show you.
That's a bit of a stretch,
like,
but I'll take it. I'll take it.
But like I've played in the Norse mythology world because I bought it and have it, and I've shown the stuff to like my little man, and I've shown him the different things like this is what this is, or this is what this represents, and as a tool. I mean, Fortnite skins specifically, like they have some Viking themed ones. Again, the game
Viking
itself,
theme, Viking theme, yep.
But they have like Viking themed stuff, like I'm not
You checked
too
it out
huge into
because you saw a
Fortnite.
Viking thing. Yeah, I got you.
Right. Well, my kids love Fortnite, and then I saw that they've had a Viking skin at one point, and
And
that's kind of
right,
I'll
bridge the
play with my
gap.
kids, and I actually have
Yeah,
one of the
bridge the
Viking
gap. I
themed
got you.
skins. So, of course, there's Smite. A couple honorable mention games I want to bring up real fast. Valheim is a good one,
No, fuck
even
that
though
game.
it takes cash.
Yeah, he's gonna bring up
Um,
Valheim. I'm not gonna bring up Valheim. I don't like Valheim. I wasted my money on Valheim.
I'm sorry, bro.
Okay, it's a decent game. I hate the genre. I fucking hate that genre. I didn't realize that the genre it was. I wasted my money.
That's fair. That's fair. If you're not into building survival games, Valheim's not for you, because that's all it is.
You're not into
Um,
building a house while your person's freezing to death and you get bitten in the balls by a fucking worthless dumb creature and you don't have a weapon. It's not for you.
Fair. There's a game called Tainted Grail Conquest, which is technically Arthurian, but it lends into the Arthurian storytelling from a Nordic point of view, which I thought was very interesting.
What's it called?
Tainted Grail Conquest. It's basically you're a Nordic
Tainted Grail
settler.
Conquest.
You're a Nordic settler who ends up in Arthurian controlled thing, but then something happens and you end up in some weird alterverse thing. I don't know. It's really complicated, but it has this very strong Nordic undertone theme and references and stuff like that. And it's a weird like survival card game thing. It's interesting. It's different.
Dark Fantasy RPG deck builder.
Yeah, it's complicated. It's difficult. It is very difficult, but the theme and aesthetic of it's really cool. And of course, I have to bring up Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Not good for mythology, really good for the aesthetic and probably some of the culture stuff.
I never
But if
played
you're
it.
looking for mythology references, definitely not the place to go because they have taken it, of course, with their whole ancient alien concept and changed it. But there is some really cool like cutbacks in Valhalla that go back into the time of the progenitor alien race that is the gods from mythology, is how it's presented in Assassin's Creed. It's very Stargatey if you get that kind of reference, where the gods are aliens from another thing and they created man to be like servants is what it is in Assassin's Creed universe as a whole. So and the events of Ragnarok is the supposed uprising of humanity against them or something like that is how it's depicted in the game. Anyway, but it's good because it's got like the culture and a lot of the aesthetics, and it's around the time, it's shortly after the events of Ragnar Lothbrok and his sons having conquered and settled in England. So you go and you're back and forth between Scandinavia and that, but it's really cool. It's fun if you like that kind of run around, kill them, and fighting type adventure game. The one last thing, so then we can wrap up, Fro, I think we need to bring up a direct descendant of Lord of the Rings, or a great inspiration taken from Lord of the Rings to create it. The birthplace, which is only an hour away from where I currently live.
So fucking confused what this is supposed to be.
By none other than the Gygax himself, Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh.
How can we not bring up Dungeons and Dragons?
Oh, Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, so I didn't bring this one up because I thought like we'd be all right with leaving it in the wayside, but
I felt the need to bring it up.
It again, this for a lot of people will probably be the first time they ever even pretend to pray to another god besides Yahweh. And that it was for me. I can tell you that. It wasn't until I had a paladin, right? And like my paladin prays down and I think I was like Valar or whatever. Valar? Whatever. It was one of the basic gods. Or Raynar? I don't remember his name, but I'm like...
They've changed over the years as well.
Palor. P-A-L-A-O-R.
Yeah, Palor.
Yep. So, and like I did actual like prayer to Palor, and I'm like it was the closest I had or the first time I had done a prayer to anything that wasn't essentially the Christian God. Like, honestly. Granted, it was a fake in-game prayer, but it was the closest I got, right? And for some people, it probably will be. Not to mention, will be like the first time they pretend to be anything besides Christian, right? For some people, or for some people, pretend to be any sort of religious at all. Not to mention, you have things like the Berserker, Barbarian. It's literally just supposed to be like a Berserker. You have shape-shifting druids. That's in many cultures, but when you have a lot of the like the classical werewolves, classical as in like humans who turned into literal wolves, not hybrids. Yeah, there's so many like little bits of D&D that are have
definitely
mythology or pagan inspiration. And I've been playing D&D for a long fucking time.
Oh yeah, I've been playing D&D since I was like 5 or 6. I've been playing for a long time. Now, I'm sorry I have to bring up one last thing because I almost forgot about it. In my notes, I had the name wrong. Xbox 360, a company called Silicon Knights made a game that was released. Too Human.
Yep.
Anybody who wants an amazing action role-playing game
he wants a decent.
I think the game. I am sad they never finished it. That is my biggest pet peeve.
There you go.
That the company, just whatever reason, went under or something, and no one bothered to pick it up. Now, I have tried to find
interesting story.
Somebody has the rights to the game, but I can't find out who. I've looked. I don't know who has it.
Silicon Knights was, I think, fully bought by Nintendo.
Was it?
I want to say it was like fully purchased by Nintendo, because they are the same ones who did Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem, if you remember that game, which was on the GameCube. Yeah, it was a GameCube exclusive horror game, which is one of the best fucking horror games that's ever been made. It honestly is one of the best, and it's crazy that it's on the GameCube, but yes, it's a GameCube exclusive horror game. That also has one of the absolute best fear mechanics or systems in any game that's came out. And Nintendo copywritten it, trademarked it, whatever the fuck it is. So people can't make a reproduction of the fear system in that game. Which was crazy because like the fear system, like it was based off like what you literally saw, and like it changed like how shit works in the games. Like it's crazy. Again, Beard, I'll send you a link to this because it's another one of those videos that I checked out, just like the Max Payne. Like I got into a spree and like checked. There's a whole bunch of them. But yeah, Silicon Knights, very good one. Too Human, very good one. The whole thing, it's like
I wish whoever currently has the rights to that game needs to do one of those like they did with Crash Bandicoot. Just update it. Like maybe you could tweak the mechanics a little bit, but if you just redo it, make it look pretty, and then finish the story. Like please, like the way that they interpreted the Norse mythology storyline and where they picked it up in the story, and this post-apocalyptic world that you're living in the future, and just the way that it's presented and the way that it was done from a storytelling standpoint I found it very refreshing, very very respectful. I think out of any game that I've seen that has done a mythology based story, I think this one pays a lot of respect to the source material. Does it take its entitlement and take its spin? Yes, it does. But it does pay a lot of respect, unlike a lot of other games where they will just take it and they will bastardize it to make it what they want it to be.
I don't have the game popped up right now, but there is like this turn-based tile game where you like move your characters, like very Warhammer-esque in how you move. That, and it's all Viking pagan. You are a Viking, right? That's why I say Viking, but it's pagan, right? It's a pagan fucking game, and it's very like, yeah, there's certain spots where it's like, yeah, they went and sacrificed the goat for so and so, but it's like, well, I mean, that's probably what they would have done. So, yeah, like, it's one of the ones like, it's right. For the time, it probably is pretty fucking accurate. But Jotun, there's a game called Jotun that tells the story of Guningagap, right, in the creation of the world. That is probably one of the most accurate and best represented games of a pagan that I've seen. Now, granted, you don't like see any pagan lifestyle, and it's like a you do a puzzle area boss fight, and that's all it is, right? So it's like a boss rush kind of game. But yeah, like they're telling a story as you're like doing the puzzles, and it's all very on point. So, anyways,
that's fair.
I've
never played that, but I have. We are
an hour and a half into this. We got to get going.
Okay,
we're rambling.
Yeah, I have a little man who is right. Yeah,
we got a whole bunch of listeners going like, "Wait a minute, I didn't learn shit." Yeah, sorry, this wasn't about learning. This was just literally us sharing stuff that we like.
Yep. And with that said, if you have anything,
like, yeah,
absolutely.
Anything
if there's something we don't know or we didn't talk about or that you know that you think is fantastic or you think is good representation of culture or paganism or pagan themes or anything, yes, share it with us. I want to ingest. Give me more.
I mean, honestly, even if it's something that's not like accurate, like there's this game with a Viking helmet in it, but it's kind of funny. Like the fact that it's a Viking helmet in the game, like or whatever, or just like anything else. Let us know, man. Or like consume the shit.
Blizzard's Goofy 3 Vikings game. If it's something as goofy as that, I mean,
yeah,
let us know.
Let us know. What you got? I like no stuff. Goodbye.
Right? Bye. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to this episode of Two Pagans in a Pod podcast. We thank you so much for listening. And if you really enjoyed our content and you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, be sure to leave us a like, follow, or subscribe on whatever media of viewing or listening that you've been enjoying this episode on. Additionally, you can always check out a lot of our other content, such as the Modern Norse Library that Fro does here on YouTube, or you can even check out our UPG sharing episodes, which can be found on all medium spectrums that we post on. Additionally, don't forget we always have that segment where we like to share pagan artwork, so be sure to drop us a line via email, or maybe even contact us on Twitter and share with us your art, maybe a poem, or any other kind of medium that you would enjoy us sharing on our podcast, and we'll be sure to get it on the next episode of Two Pagans in a Pod podcast. Thank you guys again so much, and we'll catch you next time.